Hey guys, how's it going? This is Mike from M&R Automotive. Today we're installing the dual 30-inch light bar setup on a GMC Canyon AT4 2023 and up. Okay, so let's pop the hood and see what we got. First things first, we're going to go ahead and take out these two screws on top to loosen the grille from the engine bay compartment. And then you're going to peel this back just to loosen it up. Excellent. Next, the thing we're going to do is go into the fender well. Go ahead and take out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a couple more 1, 2, 3, 4 inside, and we'll be able to remove the cover and get to all the bolts for the bumper itself. Next thing I want to do is prop open the fender flares. And the only thing we're going to do is just grab them and pry them open. They're just held on clips. Go. And we're going to go ahead and remove, there's one more Torx bolt here, and that's going to separate the fender from the front portion of the grille. The thing we lost, this fender flare is held up on various clips, so we did lose a couple inside, so we're going to go ahead and just pry them out, because when we are reinstalling it, it'll make it easier if it's inside the actual flare inside of the, as opposed to the vehicle. So we're going to take them out, and then we're going to reinsert them into those grooves, and there's 3 that ended up unclipping pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and reach in from inside the fender well with a 7mm socket. There's 3 bolts that we're going to loosen up, and that's going to pull the mounting plate down, so that way we can unclip and separate the body panels. I'm going to go ahead and remove it, and then I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about, so that way you guys can see which 3 they are. But mainly what we're going to do, we're going to go in through here with a 7mm socket, and we're going to loosen up these 3 bolts here. Now that we got this bolt loose, we're going to go ahead and pry this. So now we got this loose. And let's go on the other side and get it loose on the other end as well. Now we're going to go ahead and pry the fender flares out. And there's one more screw here that's also a Torx that we are going to remove in order to separate the 2 body panels. So same thing here, there's a plate here, and then there's going to be 3 bolts, and we have to loosen them in order to be able to separate and unclip this part of the bumper. And now we're going to lift and separate these 2 trims. See, if you pull on a little bit, it'll start unclipping everything around the headlights. Now that we have the side piece taken off, I want to show you what 3 bolts we loosened in order to get that piece from under the clips. We have 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here. These are 7mm bolts, and you get in through the fender well. So you don't have to remove them completely, you just loosen them a little bit so that way it pulls out, and then you can unclip the sides. Now that we got everything on top and the sides unclipped, let's go ahead and remove some of the bolts on the bottom, so that way we can loosen it up before we take off the front end. The next thing we're going to do is remove the skid plate from the vehicle, and it's a couple of bolts, 1, 2, 3, and then also on the back there's 2 more as well. So I'm going to get the front ones off first. This is a number 13 socket. Now we're going to get the 2 back bolts on the skid plate. So now we're going to go ahead and remove all the Torx screws that are holding the bottom of the bumper to the vehicle as well. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now there's 3 bolts that we have to remove. This is a 9/32 socket, and we're gonna go ahead and remove these 3 on both sides. This is the passenger one, and then after this I'm gonna do the driver's as well. I removed these 3 bolts using a 9/32 socket, and equivalent to it is a 7mm. Now we're going to do the same 3 bolts on the driver's side, and we're going to see what else is holding it. So I see there's 2 more clips that are holding it here. It's actually not a clip, it's a ratchet bolt, so I'm going to go ahead and remove these. And there's bolts here. I'm going to go ahead and loosen them up. One thing we're going to want to remove is the actual fog light assembly. There's a plug here on the passenger side. We're going to go ahead and unplug it. You pull the red pin back, squeeze, and unplug. I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 Torx bolts. And we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. There's a clip here, and I just pried it out, and that's the only thing that was holding the grill back. Now we can go ahead and remove it completely. Now that we removed the bumper from the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and install the mounts for the 30-inch setup. Notice that there's a slotted system on the mount, and you can install either 1 or 2 light bars. We're going to remove factory push pins on the side of the radiator shroud. There's 2 lower, there's a total of 3. We're only going to remove the bottom 2. We're going to slide our bracket in between. Okay, so in order to take out the push pins, we're going to pry the top piece, and then just take it out. So that's 1. There is a driver and a passenger mount. Reference the instruction manual for the correct side of the vehicle. Right now we're installing the driver's side. What we're going to do, here are the 2 holes for the push pin. We're going to go ahead and wedge our bracket in between the rubber piece and the plastic shroud. We're going to wiggle it in order to align the holes. And we're going to go ahead and reinsert the same push pins in the vehicle. So press it in, and it's very solid, it won't move. Now we can do the same thing on the passenger side. We're going to take out the 2 bottom push pins, the bottom and the middle one. We're going to leave the top one intact. That's 1. That's 2. We're going to slide our bracket, align it with the holes, and reinstall the 2 push pins. That's 1. And that's 2. Now we're ready to install a light bar. Now we're going to slide the light bar in between the rails and use the supplied Allen hardware in order to mount the light bar onto the bracket. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the passenger side. Now that we installed the first light bar and we like the position of it, we're going to go ahead and mount the second one. Looks like we're going to have to raise this side slightly up, and then it's going to be right in the opening. So we're going to remove it, tighten it, and put it back on. Now that we have the light bars installed on the vehicle, let's talk about the wiring. The bottom light bar that we use is a pure amber single function, so it actually has a wiring with 2 wires in it, a positive and a negative. The top light bar that we used, it's a white light bar, but it also has Amber DRL capability. So that's the main reason why there's 3 wires here. There's a positive for the white light, there's a ground, and there's a positive for the Amber DRL. We decided to use a wireless control module, and this is the one we're going to be using. It is wireless, so we are not going to have to go through the firewall to drag the control inside the vehicle. So this is an extra advantage, and it is capable of using 8 different circuits. This is going to allow us to wire the light bars in the engine bay and have a wireless remote panel inside the vehicle without having to go through the firewall. So let me show you what this is. The link to this module is going to be in a description of the video, and the product is made by Join4 World. We have the main distribution box, and I'm going to open up and show you how all the circuits are. You have the actual remote with a magnet inside, so that way you can stick on the display. You'll have 8 different wireless buttons. It comes with a 80 amp fuse that gets connected to the battery, and a ground wire also to the battery terminal. And the last thing that I did, it does come with 2 L brackets. The thing that I did for the Canyon, for the 2023 GMC Canyon, I made a 90-degree bend between the first hole and the second hole right in the center, so that way it gets mounted on top of the fuse box, and we're going to reuse the hardware on the vehicle. So by using these bolts, it's going to rest on top of this fuse box in position. So in order to do that, you're going to have to, it comes with normal L brackets. You can make a 90-degree bend in a vise and throw some paint on it, and then after we install it, it's going to be like this. This module is not designed specifically for the Canyon, so I had to modify this to make it work with this vehicle. There's other ways to mount the module. I just thought this would be a very sturdy idea by using these 2 bolts. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the module apart. I'll show you the circuits. So now I'm going to go ahead and open this up, show you where all the connections are. It is a Phillips bolts that you have to remove, and there's 2 on each side. I'm going to go ahead and throw them in the box, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall them at the end of the installation. So here is the actual control board. If you can see here, this is going to be the positive terminal with the fuse. That's the ground. Here's all the fuses and the different amp draws that they are capable for. If unsure, you could actually check the instruction manual. It tells you 30 amp, 20 amp, 10 amp, and 5 amp, which fuse to use. And these are the positive and negatives that you're going to be using to connect the actual light fixtures or any other accessory that you're looking for. Notice how it's really good quality. Everything's epoxied, so everything's inside, everything's waterproof. And let's go ahead and mount it. So the first thing I'm going to do is loosen these, and I am going to fit the positive and the negative terminal wire and squeeze this wire through here. I'm going to put it under the terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. And we're going to do the same thing with the ground. We're going to squeeze it under. Notice that's the only opening that you're going to get after you mount it on the vehicle, so all the wiring is going to go through it. And now the first thing I like to do, for a safety reason, when connecting it to the vehicle, there is a fuse box here. I'm going to take the cover off, the clear cover, and I'm going to actually disengage it by pressing on this button. So if this is in line, that means there's current going through it. So when I'm connecting it to the battery, I want to press the button and disrupt the current, so now there's no electricity going to the box as I'm wiring it up. After we're done, we're just going to come in here and reconnect it to put power into the line. So like this, and I'm going to go ahead and mount it to the battery. Okay, so let's connect the positive and negative terminals on the battery. We're going to go ahead and remove this protective cover. We'll replace it after we're done. So we're going to start with the positive first. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this bolt. I'm going to slide the terminal for it. Notice that this is disengaged, the fuse, so there's no power running through it. and I'm going to tighten it back up. Okay, so now the positive is ready. We're going to put the boot back on, and we can actually reinstall the protective sheathing. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the negative terminal. Let's go ahead and pair the remote to the frequency to the circuits, so that way I can start utilizing the module. I'm going to go ahead and put power into the control module, and based on the instructions it says to press the 5th key counterclockwise, which is this one based on a diagram. I got to press it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice that this light is blinking. That means it's paired. So now we can use different buttons, and you notice if I press button number 1, it's turning it on and off based on the circuit that I'm using. So now we have the remote paired. So now I'm going to actually use the L brackets in order to mount the module into the location that I want. Now let's go ahead and wire 2 of the light bars that we just installed. One of the light bars is dual function, so it actually needs 2 power sources. The red wire is the power source for the main white light. The blue is for the Amber DRL capability. Black is for the ground. And for a single function light bar, you just have a red and black. The red is the positive and the black is the ground. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to designate a 10 amp fuse for the white function, which is the red wire, and this is the dual function light bar. Right next to it is a negative terminal, so we're gonna have to put the ground in there, which is the black wire. Okay, and then the DRL function I'm gonna put on the positive of the 5 amp fuse, which is the blue wire. It already has the ground. So let's go ahead and wire the single function light bar. I want it on switch number 3, so that way it's spaced out on the controller. Remember to feed the wire from underneath, and that's going to be this circuit. We're going to feed the red cable into the positive and the black into the negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. This switch is going to turn on the white. The one above it is going to turn on the Amber DRL of the first light bar. And then I wanted this button to control the amber of the single function. So here's the 2 light bars and 2 different power sources. Thank you guys for watching, and I appreciate the support.